Some things we leave behind, but they never quite let us go. We try to bury memories beneath layers of time, telling ourselves they're forgotten, that they belong to some distant chapter in our past. But every once in a while, without warning, they return uninvited, unstoppable as if they've been waiting, biding their time in the shadows of our hearts. Tonight, I find myself standing in a place haunted by such memories, an old, abandoned library that holds pieces of who I once was, of who I was with, and who I left behind. The scent of aged paper and dust stirs something deep within me, like whispers of a time I'd carefully placed aside. This place has a way of reminding you of the things you thought you could lock away. You see, when we walk away from love, we leave pieces of ourselves behind, tucked into forgotten corners of rooms like this. But love, in its strange, quiet persistence, keeps calling, pulling you back to the places that once felt alive with possibility, to faces that once held the world in their eyes. I thought I'd let go, moved on, as people say. But the weight of it, of what I lost here, remains, persistent. Tonight, though I stand here alone, I feel the presence of something unfinished, something waiting. It presses against my chest, demanding to be acknowledged. I used to believe that memories could be hidden away, boxed up and left behind, but here, in the quiet of this abandoned library, every shadow, every speck of dust seems to carry a part of us, waiting to be reclaimed. I'm beginning to wonder if perhaps I never left these memories behind at all, if they were always here, woven into the walls of this place, waiting for me to return, waiting for us both to return. Because maybe some things don't end simply because we decide to walk away. Maybe some loves are too deep to fade, too rooted in the places we shared and the moments we lived. I thought I buried these memories, buried him. But tonight, they've come alive again, pressing against my heart in ways I can't ignore. And as I stand here, I realize, I'm not alone in this after all. I find myself wandering through these forgotten aisles, the dim light barely reaching the edges of this vast, dust-filled expanse. The air is thick with memories, carrying the faint, comforting scent of old paper, mingled with a hint of dampness that only age can create. In this place, every corner seems to hold whispers from a time when life felt untouched, a time when we had only each other and a world that we believed could hold our secret. Once, we used to meet here after hours, finding refuge among these shelves. The library was our world, a place where time seemed to slow down, as if even the clocks didn't dare intrude upon what we shared. There was something sacred about the quiet of these nights, the way the silence would wrap around us like a promise we thought could somehow remain unbroken. He was everything I wasn't. I, too calculated, concerned with appearances, driven by ambition, that led me to keep parts of myself hidden away. And he was warm, grounded, a spirit unbothered by the constraints I'd wrapped myself in. I was drawn to him like light to the night, as if his presence could somehow fill the hollow spaces I had long ignored. And here, in the quiet of this place, he'd look at me with eyes that saw through all the walls I'd built. This spot, this corner of the library where the bookshelves curve, casting shadows that seemed to wrap around us, this was ours. We would sit here for hours, whispering about everything and nothing at all. A leaf from one of those nights still sits between these pages, fragile yet holding the weight of 1,000 unspoken things. It's strange how some places keep pieces of you, parts you thought you could leave behind. Even stranger, how those pieces seem to wait, as if they know you'll come back one day. We made a quiet life in these shelves, hidden from the world. And I think that's why this place feels so heavy now, why every shadow, every creak of the wooden floor echoes with memories of him. For as much as I thought I could lock him away in my past, his absence fills this room, making it feel alive with everything we left unsaid. It's him, the same calm, steady presence that held me once. There's a flicker in his gaze, as if he's surprised yet somehow always expected this moment, as if he, too, has felt the weight of these walls, the same call to return. I want to say something, but the words remain stuck, tangled in the years that have passed between us. So instead, we stand, suspended in this shared silence, tethered to a past that, for the first time in so long, feels close enough to touch. A touch, that's all it takes. The softest brush of his hand against mine, and suddenly, I'm taken back to the nights we spent here, to the warmth of his presence by my side. I glance up, and he's looking at me the way he once did, with a gaze that seems to reach past everything I've become, straight into who I was, who I am. In this single moment, the years fall away, leaving only us, standing in the quiet of this forgotten library, our silent connection as potent as it ever was. I'd come here to face my past, thinking perhaps it would offer some closure. But now, as I stand with him, in this space where our stories are forever entangled, I wonder if I came here for something else, something I was too afraid to admit. Here, under the desk and dim light, I feel my heart beating louder than it has in years, as if awakening to the possibility of something I'd long since buried. And for the first time, I wonder if maybe he's felt the same. I try to steady myself, offering a faint smile as he stands across from me. After all this time, here we are, both circling around words left unsaid, drifting back to a time we both thought we had buried. The silence stretches, and I can't help but notice how he looks at me as if he's waiting, yet somehow resigned, as if he's accepted that certain things, once broken, can never truly be mended. He reaches for the book, his fingers pausing just inches from mine. The silence between us feels louder here, as if it's not just the quiet of the library but the weight of everything we've left unsaid. I glance up, catching his gaze, and there's something in his eyes, something both familiar and distant. A glimmer of the man I once knew, yet changed older, wiser, perhaps a little worn from the years. We exchange pleasantries, small words, things people say when they don't quite know how to begin. "How have you been?" he asks, his voice soft, a shade too careful, as though he's afraid the answer might unravel something neither of us are ready for. I tell him about my work, the students, the long hours, trivial details, and yet, I can't help but notice the look in his eyes. It's a look that tells me he remembers a version of me who would have given it all up for him. I catch myself looking, as if I expect to see us there, hidden in the shadows, young and reckless. We were so certain then, untouched by doubt, and I wonder how it all faded so quickly. The image of us back then hangs in the air, as vivid as if it were yesterday, but he looks away, lost in his own thoughts, his expression softened by a sadness I'd somehow forgotten he could wear. "This place hasn't changed," he says, more to himself than to me. I see him glance around, his eyes settling on the shelves, his gaze tracing the lines of the walls, the crevices and corners we once claimed as our own. I want to tell him that it's not the same, that the air feels heavier now, laden with a kind of emptiness that time brings, but the words slip away, replaced by silence. I see him holding it, and my heart skips. The letter, my letter, written in a moment of quiet desperation, tucked away with the hope he'd never see it. It was a letter filled with things I could never say aloud, confessions I wasn't brave enough to share, thoughts that once felt too heavy to carry alone. My breath catches, knowing that what lies inside those words could unravel everything we've both tried to move past. He reads, and I can see the words piercing him, sentence by sentence, tearing through the walls he's built. There's no anger in his expression, only a kind of wounded understanding, a sadness that settles between us like a weight we can no longer ignore. Finally, he looks up, and there's a question in his eyes, one he can barely bring himself to say aloud. "Why did you leave?" he asks, his voice barely a whisper. Yet each word echoes through the silence, wrapping around us like a binding thread. "Wasn't I enough?" The question lingers, hanging heavy in the air, his eyes searching mine, asking for an answer I don't know if I can give. I want to tell him he was more than enough, that he was everything. But how do you explain choices made out of fear, of wanting so much that you're afraid to lose it all? I take a breath, words faltering as I tried to tell him, to find the right way to say what I've never dared to say aloud. "You were everything to me," I say, the words barely holding together as they leave my mouth. But I was afraid. I thought I could protect us by letting go, by pretending that what we had could somehow stay untouched if I kept it hidden. I was wrong, but by the time I realized it, it was too late. I couldn't go back, couldn't undo what I'd broken. He stands there, silent, absorbing each word, and I wonder if he'll turn away, leave this room, this place that held us. Part of me knows he deserves to walk away, to leave me here with the remnants of what I threw away, but he doesn't move. Instead, he stands, watching me, his gaze softer now, the hurt replaced with something else, something almost forgiving. We fall into silence again, and for a moment, it feels as though time has rewound, bringing us back to the nights we spent here, wrapped in a world we thought no one could touch. I wonder if maybe, just maybe, he can see past my mistakes, that he remembers the love we shared before I let my fear eclipse everything we once were. I know that no words will erase the pain I caused, the years that stretched between us, but as we stand here, In the quiet of this forgotten library, I realized that maybe this moment, this shared silence, this tentative chance to reconnect might be enough. Enough to remind us of who we once were, and who we could still become. I thought I could carry on with small talk, that somehow, I could avoid the heart of it, the reason we've both come back here tonight. But standing here, watching the pain in his eyes, I realize that there's no running from it anymore. I feel the weight of every choice, every moment of silence, pressing down on me in a way that words can no longer hide. The quiet stretches between us, thick and unyielding, as if the walls themselves are listening, absorbing the tension that neither of us can seem to break. And then, without warning, the words slip out, words I've held back for so long that they practically tear through me. I never stopped thinking about you. You have no idea how often I've replayed those days, I say, my voice barely holding together. I thought I could move on, that I could bury what we had. But every time I tried, it would come back, your laughter, your warmth. It was like a part of me was left behind in this room, in this place, and I kept trying to convince myself that I could live without it. He looks at me, his face a blend of anger and hurt, a rawness I'm not prepared for. So, that's it, he asks, his voice sharp, cutting through the silence. You walked away, and I was supposed to just vanish from your life, from your memory. Was that all I was to you, a memory to be hidden away in some corner of your mind, like some old book collecting dust? It wasn't that simple, I say, struggling to find the words that could make him understand. You were never just a memory, you were everything, but I was afraid. I thought that if anyone found out, it would ruin everything I'd worked for, everything I'd built. He shakes his head, his expression a mixture of disbelief and sorrow. So, you chose the world's approval over me. You let me believe that I meant something to you, only to push me away the moment things got difficult. Did you ever really love me? Or was I just part of some hidden life you wanted to keep out of sight? The question pierces through me, cutting deeper than anything I could have prepared for. I want to reach for him, to tell him that he was more than that, so much more, but the words seem to fall flat. Inadequate. How do you explain choices made out of fear, out of a need to belong to a world that never fully accepted you? I let my gaze wander to the shelves around us, filled with forgotten books, relics of stories left untold. The irony isn't lost on me. We were like those books, kept hidden, gathering dust, our love tucked away where no one could see. I take a step forward, but he holds up a hand, his eyes filled with a kind of sorrow that shakes me to my core. All these years, he says softly, his voice laced with a pain I can't ignore, I kept thinking, maybe you'd change your mind. Maybe one day you'd realize what you lost and come back. But now, standing here, I wonder if it was all just a story I told myself to feel less alone. The sound jolts us, breaking the intensity of the moment, but only for a brief second. My heart races, pounding in my chest, and I feel my carefully constructed composure slipping away. I have to say it, have to tell him the truth, even if it costs me the last shred of dignity I've held onto. I was a coward, I say, the words tumbling out, raw and unguarded. I was so terrified of losing everything I'd worked for, of being judged, that I chose safety over love. But it's haunted me every single day, every decision I made, every achievement I reached. It was all hollow, because none of it could fill the emptiness of losing you. For a moment, he doesn't respond, just stares at me, as if searching my face for some sign that I'm being honest, that this isn't just some fleeting moment of remorse. And then his voice, barely a whisper, cuts through the silence. You left me. You left me to figure it all out on my own, to pick up the pieces while you built your life without me. Do you have any idea what that did to me? I can feel the weight of his words, each one hitting me with a force I can't deflect. There's a part of me that wants to argue, to defend myself, but the truth is undeniable. I left him. I don't expect you to forgive me, I say, my voice barely steady. I know I've hurt you in ways I can't ever make up for, but standing here now, with you, I realize that nothing I've done, nothing I've achieved, has ever compared to what we shared. And maybe I'm too late, but I want you to know that you were never just a hidden part of my life. You were the best part of it. His face softens, but there's still a distance, a caution in his gaze. I can see the conflict in his eyes, the years of pain and unanswered questions that linger between us. He takes a step back, his shoulders slumping as he lets out a long, weary sigh. I don't know if I can just pick up where we left off, he says, his voice quiet, almost broken. part of me wants to believe you, to hold on to the memory of what we had. But another part can't forget the way you left, the way you let me go as if I was something you could walk away from without a second thought. I understand, I say, the words catching in my throat. I don't expect you to trust me again. I don't expect anything. But I had to tell you. I had to come back here, to face the truth I ran from, to let you know that. Even if you can't forgive me, I'll never stop loving you. I'll carry that with me, even if this is the last time I see you. The silence between us is heavy, thick with words unspoken, but in that moment, I see something shift in his eyes, a softness, a glimmer of understanding, though not yet forgiveness. He takes a breath, nodding slowly, as if trying to make sense of everything we've just unearthed, of the wounds we've both carried for so long. He doesn't say anything, just looks at me, his gaze steady, unguarded, and in that moment, I feel a weight lift, a sense of peace, bittersweet yet freeing. I know that things won't be the same, that some scars run too deep to fade. But standing here, in the quiet of this old library, I realize that maybe we've both found a way to let go, to make peace with the pieces we left behind. The silence stretches between us, heavy but somehow softened, as if the air itself is settling after a long, restless storm. I reach out, hesitantly, my hand finding his, and for a moment, it's like nothing has changed. His hand in mine, warm and steady, fills the gaps I thought I'd learned to live with. We stand there, holding onto the silence as if it could somehow hold all the words we never found the courage to say. There's an intensity in his gaze, a quiet strength that's both familiar and unfamiliar. I want to tell him that I'd give anything to go back, to rewrite the story we left here, to undo the choices that kept us apart. But I can see in his eyes that he knows this. He knows the love we shared was real, that it mattered, even if it's bound forever to this place, hidden in the shadows of these forgotten shelves. I open my mouth to say something, but the words catch, fragile and uncertain, until finally, I manage to whisper. Thank you, for letting me find you here, for letting me remember what it felt like to be alive, if only for a moment. He nods, his hand still in mine, and for a heartbeat, I think maybe, just maybe, this is where we begin again. But as he pulls away, I feel the familiar ache settle back into my chest, the understanding that some things, even the deepest loves, are meant to be left as memories. He looks at me one last time, a look that holds both forgiveness and a gentle distance, and then he turns, his footsteps fading as he walks toward the door. And just like that, he's gone, the echoes of his footsteps merging with the stillness, as if the library itself is absorbing the final traces of what we once were. I stand there, the silence settling around me, but there's something different now, a strange sense of peace that wasn't there before. Maybe it's the knowledge that we were real, that what we shared was more than a fleeting moment, more than something I could just leave behind. I look around the room, this place that has held so much of us, and it feels almost as if it's saying goodbye, too. The dim light casts long shadows over the books, the shelves, the hidden corners that still hold pieces of who we once were. And I realize that maybe it's enough to know that some loves don't fade, even if we can't keep them, that some memories remain alive in us, no matter how much time passes. Maybe some things we never forget. I whisper to the empty room, a faint smile tugging at my lips. Even if we can't hold on to them, as I turn to leave, a warmth spreads through me, gentle and quiet, the knowledge that love, even the kind we leave behind, has a way of staying with us. I may walk away from this place, but it will never leave me, and in that, there's a strange kind of comfort. I step out of the library, the memories trailing softly behind me, like a quiet promise. In life, we often find ourselves standing in places that hold pieces of our past moments and memories we thought we'd left behind. Sometimes, we return to those places and find not only the memories we left there, but also parts of ourselves we thought we'd lost. This library, filled with the quiet echoes of a love that was real, became more than just a setting. It was a reminder that some connections shape us, even if they don't stay forever. Maybe there are people we meet who change us in ways we never fully understand until we look back. And maybe, even if we don't end up by their side, their presence remains, gently guiding us forward. Some loves don't need a perfect ending to be real. They live on in the choices we make, the people we become, and the way we carry them with us. Have you ever had an encounter like this? A moment when a person from your past reappeared, stirring up memories and emotions you thought you'd put to rest? If you have, share your thoughts below. Your story might just be the inspiration someone else needs. We are Pride Stories Unfiltered, your number one pride.